You're invited to imagine what's next. What the next view you wake up to will be. Where your next adventures will start from. Your perfect space to entertain. And your sanctuary to unwind in. As you begin to imagine your new place, we'll be here to help you find it. Because nothing compares to what's next. Sotheby'sRealty.com.
Have you ever considered installing a rooftop solar system in your home or your building? Last week, in an exclusive interview with the Power and Renewable Energy Minister RK Singh, we asked, what will it take to make rooftop solar adoption become popular in the country? He not only sounded confident of implementing the recently announced PM Suryodaya Yojana, targeting 1 crore low-income households for rooftop solar installations, he also outlined the importance of raising awareness for mass adoption. How can we move towards powering our homes with clean, green rooftop solar? And does it make sense for everyone or not? Joining me to answer these questions, Mr. Ashwini Swain, Sustainable Futures Collaborative Fellow, also Sanjay Seth, VP and CEO of GRIHA Council, and Saurabh Kumar, Vice President of GEAPP. Okay, Ashwini, I'm going to come to you first. Do you believe, number one, that this target of 1 crore homes under the PM Suryodaya Yojana will take us closer to that 40 gigawatt and it will be successful?
Okay, so the short answer is yes. So if we manage to put 1 to 3 kilowatt size solar systems on low-income households, 10 million low-income households, then we are going to achieve somewhat around 20 gigawatt installed capacity. 20 plus 11 and other sectors also contributing will get closer to 40 gigawatt. But we also, as you rightly pointed out in the opening, we have to do much more and it has to get widespread also. But I think this targeting of low-income households is very important and we have been suggesting this through various platforms. And the first priority should be low-income households because it addresses multiple issues, not just solar penetration, building ecosystem, also addressing discount finance issues because this in case of low-income households, the subsidy amount is also higher.
Okay. Saurabh Kumar, what's your opinion? How do you rate the chances of this scheme success?
So, Manisha, to be very honest, an ambition like 10 million homes, solarization of rooftops has never been done anywhere in the world. And I think both of these elements are part of this whole program. And as I said, here, the implementation approach is very unique. It is very direct as far as the government involvement is concerned with all these PSUs who have presence in the entire length and breadth of country are being asked to kind of aggregate roof spaces through a digital platform and then provide energy as a service. So the transaction cost for a 3 kilowatt or a 2 kilowatt rooftop owner is very, very low. Plus, there is a provision of 300 units of free electricity. And also, there will be some amount you must remember, because if I rent my roof space, and NTPC is the service provider, NTPC will need someone to maintain those solar panels, clean them from time to time. So there is additional income that would come to the households in lieu of providing the maintenance services for the service provider. So I believe it has all the right ingredients to really succeed in a very big way, so that it becomes kind of a benchmark or a case study example that can be replicated elsewhere in the world.
Sanjay, it's not like we've not had incentives, right? We've had subsidies, we've had incentives. GRIHA has rating systems for buildings. People do take ratings. Buildings take green ratings. But then I find that those solar systems, rooftop solar systems, are not even used. They just are abandoned very, very quickly. How do we solve for those kind of problems?
Now, if you put a solar rooftop at the top of the building or at the top of the dwelling, the heat ingress into the building takes place through the roof. Now that provides shading, and it is also providing the rooftop solar is generating electricity for meeting the demands. So I think it's a double whammy, and to me, it's a great initiative of the government. I hope that going forward, we see much more larger adoption of the solar rooftop into the residential sector. By as a rating agency, we have seen that the largest adoption has been in the commercial and institutional built environment that is there, but the penetration in the household sector has been very low. And the reason for that is, I think, the initial cost and lack of awareness among consumers. There are initiatives of the government of India where there is subsidies and all of that are provided. Models available such as the REC and PPAs are there with related payback periods. But there is general perception of renewable energy installation remaining a high cost investment, and that is why there is not large scale adoption.
Large scale adoption. Okay, some of the key challenges, and we were researching it in terms of rooftop solar installations. What are these? One is lack of awareness, as what you said, Sanjay, high installation costs. Electricity distribution companies, or DISCOMs as we call them, they are kind of reluctant, right, because they lose revenues. Net metering limitations. Several states, which the minister also said, do not have the right grid for net metering. Frequent policy changes as well sometimes have happened. Maybe it's stabilized over the last since 2019, but before that there were several policy changes, and sometimes across some states the approval process can be very slow and tedious. Ashwini, how much of it has been solved now? Because since 2019 the ministry itself has said we've changed a lot. You can even go onto websites like Urjan, which will immediately tell you say my monthly consumption is 7,000 rupees per month electricity bill. They will actually give you a lowdown on what level of rooftop solar installation you need, who is your distributor, who can come and fix it up for you, what will it cost you. So it has become simpler, yet there is reluctance, right? I mean, things have changed a lot over the last 15 years, but we've still not hit that conversion point. Why?
Yeah. So there are multiple reasons here. So let's first look at the cost factor. So cost factor is people who have particularly roof, they don't have enough money to install, and now this scheme, particularly for the low income households, ensures that they get 100% subsidy, which is very important. This should be leveraged for a shift from consumption subsidy on tariffs to infrastructure subsidy, which is one time as opposed to recurring monthly subsidy. So that part is getting addressed by this scheme, and hopefully in future we'll expand this. When it comes to awareness, yeah, of course, that does lack significantly, and we have to work on that. So generally, citizens and people think that electricity is a public service which should be provided by the state. They don't have the interest or appetite to own it themselves. So that level of education and awareness has to be worked on. But the third point which you pointed out, and I want to stress on, DISCOM inertia or DISCOM resistance to add rooftop systems into the grid is a big problem. And as you rightly said, it's the load which migrates out of DISCOM that reduces DISCOM's income level. And particularly people who can afford rooftop systems without subsidy are the richer consumers, who end up consuming more units of electricity, more kilowatt hours. And because in India, almost all the states have progressive tariff, the more you consume, the more you pay per unit.
Correct.
So DISCOM doesn't want to lose out that.
My question is that there are tons of us who are interested, who have the rooftop space. The other problem is that in most of the large cities, there's not enough rooftop space, isn't it, Sanjay? I mean, in a building, how much will, if there are, let's say, 100 apartments in a building, an entire rooftop solar can probably take care of what, 10%, 15% at best of the buildings and the households' needs? Give me some math there. So how do we solve for that problem, or do we even bother to solve for that problem? Let's even ask that. And stick with just solving for have rooftop solar for everyone who has a good enough, large enough roof.
Yeah, but I think, if you're talking of a high-rise building, and as you correctly said, the roof is not adequate enough to cater to the entire apartment's requirements. At best, what it can do is probably look at providing for the common lighting areas and some of those common facilities that one sees in these high-rise buildings. Other than that, also the issue of roof rights. How do we address that issue? The people are not even in say for independent floors. People are not willing to use up their roof spaces to provide it for solar installations because they feel that this is a kind of a mode of revenue generation for them. I know people who let out those spaces if they are having a party in their house and they generate revenue. So the end user is very hesitant to give away the space for solar installation. So there are issues like this which become an impediment especially in high-rise buildings to be used as solar rooftop. And in any case, the space is so limited that it will not be able to really do justice to the requirements that we are looking at.
So that's why when a state like Delhi, Ashwini, and I know you want to speak, Arvind Kejriwal has launched a scheme saying, okay, let's install rooftop solar. Again, he's also targeting under 3 kilowatt consumption households. But in a city like Delhi, I mean, there is simply not enough roof space for it to make it happen. And that's why probably even this particular scheme, the Suryodaya scheme, is very, very rural oriented.
So yeah, that's a big challenge. In our Indian cities are not built in such a way that they manage their energy systems. So it's not only high-rise buildings have problems, even in case of low-rise buildings, the level of building is not equal and they're in different areas so that each roof doesn't get equal amount of sunlight or equal duration of sunlight. So given that, you're not going to get much of plant load capacity utilization in case of urban solar systems. So that's one problem. Second, cities are hub of energy demand. I mean, by design, they're importers of energy, not just electricity, other energy products also. So if we wish them to be self-sufficient on energy, so that requires a lot of infrastructural change and including your building architecture also. So you can do to some extent. Now what we see in urban areas, there is a cost incentive, of course, but people who are mostly environmentally conscious, climate conscious, they try to put up rooftop and they see cost as an additional factor. But at a large scale, meeting a reasonable size of urban demand from rooftop is a challenge. So the opportunity is in rural area actually, where you have roofs and roofs are reasonably well built as we are moving towards from kacha to pakka house, flat roof. The scope for harnessing solar energy is much higher in rural areas.
Rural areas, absolutely. I mean, they have the roof space, the houses are more flat, all of that. So what we are agreeing to is people who are environmentally conscious can probably go ahead and install up to 5 kilowatts, but there also we need the discoms to be on board, otherwise that net metering will never happen. But stay with us, there is a CWEW report which says that nearly 25 crore households across the country have the potential to deploy 637 gigawatt of rooftop solar energy. Of this, approximately 102 gigawatt of rooftop solar generation is economically viable. So let's not give up just yet. Let's come back and see if there are more solutions, because after all, going greener and cleaner in energy is no longer optional for anybody. Stay with us.
You're invited to imagine what's next. Well, the next view you wake up to will be where your next adventures will start from. Your perfect space to entertain. And your sanctuary to unwind in. As you begin to imagine your new place, we'll be here to help you find it. Because nothing compares to what's next. Sotheby'sRealty.com.
We are putting the spotlight on India's rooftop solar ambitions. This recently announced PM Suryodaya Yojana. To find out how can we make this a mass movement? Saurabh Kumar, my question to you is that this is a large ambition that we've embarked on. Are there some learnings from the global environment or any countries abroad which have actually implemented this very, very well and made it a mass movement?
The place where this has succeeded, solar rooftop, is Germany. And Germany did it with a combination of incentives and in vitro. Previous schemes, while had 40% incentive, there were several regulatory gaps that were not filled up. For example, if you and I want to install a solar rooftop, I need at least 3 different inspections and approvals from the distribution company, which means at least 3 visits of the DISCOM official to my rooftop. Number 2, while there were vendors around, the awareness about what I would gain by putting solar was not there. Thirdly, perhaps the capital cost of the solar panels were high, and therefore it did not make economic sense for someone who's paying about 5 or 6 rupees per unit to install solar. And finally, several states still don't have net metering regulations, or even if they have, they don't kind of operationalize this. So these 4 things together were the reasons why this did not take off the way it should have been taken off. Whereas if you see the large commercial and industrial establishment, that is the rooftop solar has done very, very well. Why this will succeed? Because there have been regulatory changes. For below 3 kilowatt, you don't need any approval from the distribution company. As I said, because this is a service model being adopted, the risk and the transaction cost for a consumer who has their income or their rooftop spaces less than 3 kilowatt will only make it easier for implementation.
You know, GRIHA has a green building rating, right? For residential, 70% of India's building stock is yet to come. And I don't think it's, right now, we will meet a 100 gigawatt country ambition of solar renewable. That's not even a question anymore. But we need to do better. And we are a sun-blessed country. So give me some solutions to get vertical projects to adopt rooftop solar as we go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So, Manisha, I have complete hope that, since you rightly said that bulk of our infrastructure is yet to be put in place. So obviously, in terms of opportunity, it's a huge amount of opportunity that lies before us. Now, what we need to do, and as GRIHA, which is, bridging the gap between the government policies and implementation of renewable energy adoption, our different rating systems kind of provide the push that is required towards all of this. The market pushes that are required, the nudges that are required for larger adoption, and through a mandating process. Now, if you look at GRIHA, probably we are one of the only rating systems, I don't know whether globally, but yes, which mandates the adoption of renewable energy into when any project is given or evaluating under the green rating program. Now, the ECBC, or the Energy Conservation Building Code, which has now become the Energy Conservation and Sustainable Building Code, also mandates larger adoption of renewable in the building sector. So all of this, I think, becomes a key in kind of driving up the demand for solar rooftop integration into buildings.
Ashwini, what would your solution be? Should we just focus mostly on the commercial sector, which is the low-hanging fruit, along with the rural sector, or do you believe that as much as we can, even the urban wealthy the better off should look at some level of their energy coming from rooftop solar?
Okay. Okay. First thing, I agree with Mr. Seth. We need to make mandatory provision for any new commercial industrial setup building coming up should try to meet a part of their demand from RE sources. Few states have already done that. Haryana is one example where solar rooftop is mandated. So we try to sort of universalize that across the country. So that's one part. Rural, of course, I see that as a great solution, and this scheme marks multiple significant shifts in that way. The third point I wanted to emphasize, as I said earlier, cities have always been energy importers. So we don't have to change much of the DNA, but the way cities can contribute to energy transition, larger transition to green energy, there are other options also. So one similar option is electric vehicles. Cities have a higher density of private vehicles. While the rural area generates solar energy in the daytime, cities can store that energy in EV batteries and try to power up in the evening.
Electric vehicles. Well, let's hope a lot of this ties up, because honestly, I mean, 10 million homes or 1 crore homes is a very large target in 1.5 to 2 years. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. A very confident minister who said it is going to be possible and we will make it happen. And let's hope that we are able to broad-base the adoption of clean, green energy through rooftop solar installations. Goodbye and thanks so much for watching.
You're invited to imagine what's next. What the next view you wake up to will be. Where your next adventures will start from. Your perfect space to entertain. And your sanctuary to unwind in. As you begin to imagine your new place, we'll be here to help you find it. Because nothing compares to what's next. Sotheby'sRealty.com